very quiet in the pregame show here.
Yeah, because it's just you and me. Right now, I got to make sure the show actually happens.
You want me to make you a drink or something while we're waiting for this?
Yeah, Kraken and Coke, please, or root beer. I don't have Coke. We'll go outside here and we'll powwow. Really fast. retreat into the safety of the studio. Okay. I grab my pen. I'd be really upset if I didn't grab my pen. Got it. Okay. All right.
Welcome to our limited pre-show.
Now, pre-show is happening. Facebook page, that's why. Pre-show is happening now.
Welcome back to the 3DMs podcast. Glad you guys can make it.
Welcome to the pre-show.
How's everybody doing this lovely superb owl day?
On the day of superb owls.
Yes, well, we can't say it directly or we're going to get sued.
You're right. Superb Owl Sunday.
We're your pre-game entertainment, or if you don't watch, we're probably the only entertainment that's running.
Entertainment done for the day. Let's see.
We're short a few members today, as you may notice, which, well, we're just kind of sucking it up. Sorry. There's not much we can do about it. Neither of them could make it. So it's just me and your lovely host, Jake.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, of course.
Getting things shared and done and stuff.
We're the core of this show anyway. We don't need them.
Put the team on our backs every week.
Put the team on our back, run across the finish line with a broken leg.
Something like that. No.
So, for any of you who are listening, if you could comment, by the way, your favorite villain in a game. If you could comment your favorite villain in a game you've played, whether that be a tabletop game, a video game, or something like that, I would appreciate it. We're going to be going over it and discussing it some point during the show, given that most of the show is going to be about villains.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert. Yes, I know we've got a lot of dead air right now, but there's only two of us, and one of us isn't even on a mic right now. So
I'm trying, Paul.
I know you're trying your best, Jake. Oh boy, we're off to a rough start.
No, I'm just getting everything shared. I'll be right over.
Yeah, I mean, we're what, like 2 minutes off start time?
Yeah, about
like 3 minutes, yeah.
3 minutes, yeah. Just getting everybody, shared and all set, and making sure our viewership can see us.
Yeah. We don't want it to be another lost episode just because we're short everyone.
I know, right? Yeah, we do. I'm going to have to probably explain that at some point because, last week was episode 15, but it says episode 14 on...
Just one offset.
Yeah.
We'll re-record episode 3 at some point, we promise.
One point. One someday. Maybe. Okay, I just got to share this one more time, then I'll slide into the camera with you.
Slide into those DMs.
Nope, just slide in the frame.
Works for me.
Shoot, boy.
Chilly out there. Hope you guys aren't driving because it's rough out there. Whew.
Yeah, I guess, that is something we should say, that there's a reason we're starting late today.
Yes. Well, the reason we're late is because there's about an inch of snow on every major highway, and that made driving difficult. So we arrived here about 20 minutes ago. So we just kind of ran in here, slammed everything down on the table, and here we are. But, well, I'm sure you know that if you're from the Michigan area.
Let's get these encoders on.
Oh, yeah. Remember to leave those on. Remember to turn them off when we head out.
Oh, no, trust me, it's been beaten into my brain.
All right, well, we are about to start. Please bear with.
Yeah, I just got to make sure the volume is off. There we go. 2 minutes now. Go on.
Not much for me to really say here other than really wish I had more backup here. I'm feeling a bit on the spot.
Yeah, this is how we're gonna make a man out of you by doing this. We're just gonna get you on. Don't worry though. You only gotta fill pre-show content for 1 more minute.
Well,
Quick, make a bunch of Super Bowl jokes. Go.
I don't know anything about football. Or
Oh,
sorry,
all right.
hand egg.
Well, so much for that.
I know that 2 people are going to hand egg at each other, and those people are going to be backed up by their teams. And whoever hand eggs the hardest wins. There's my extent of football knowledge.
Yep. All right. 1 more. Okay. Yep. It's time.
Oh,
Y'all
boy.
ready for this, Paul?
I'm ready for this.
All right, because I got to aggressively slide over. So, all right, we're starting the show now.
Excellent.
Aggressively slide into frame. All right, everybody, welcome to the 3DM's podcast. Today we are talking about VLANs. And also got big news with the Tome of Foes being announced. But before we launch into all of that, we record out of the Podcast Detroit studios every week in Royal Oak. So if you're in let's try that again. If you're in southeastern Michigan and you would like to start your own podcast, it's as easy as going to podcastdetroit.com and getting yourself all set up. Very affordable, super comfortable studios, great equipment, great people to work with. You want to start your own podcast, check out Podcast Detroit today if you're in the southeastern Michigan area.
Chances are good you're not going to have an easy time with it. You're outside.
So today we are the 2DMs podcast because nobody loves us, Paul. Except for you. Except for you. Everybody else listening, you still love us.
We try our best.
Before we get going on to just another plug for our giveaway. I'm pretty sure if you're watching, you already know about it a little bit, but we're trying to hit that magical 500 like number on Facebook. So if you want to win a free Dungeons and Dragons book of your choice for 5th edition, please just go to our Facebook page, give us a like. When we get to 500, we are going to pick 2 lucky winners to each receive a book of their choice.
A non-special edition book, I should clarify.
Yeah, just because we're not going to sit there and eBay poach. Although, and this is what the professionals like to call a segue, we might be able to pull the Tome of Foes.
It's possible.
As a special edition. We'll see. Contest might be wrapping up around then at the rate of growth we've been achieving. So before we talk about villains, which is our big set piece for the week, we've got some news. Friday, it was announced that Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is the next book to be released.
One of 3 this year, from my understanding.
Mm-hmm. It is going to be dropping in May. It is 192 pages. Let's see. What other specifics do we have on it?
It's going to have a lot of extra planar monsters, from what I understand.
Yeah, they've been very light on the reveal. It's going to be $50 like every other book. It's going to have 2 covers. There's going to be
pages in the middle with writing on them.
Pages with writing. We know it's supposed to be another book that has a bunch of random content in it, kind of like Volo's. Like Volo's was combination Player's Handbook 2 / Monster Manual 2 / couple of other little things.
So is Xanathar's is more of a Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide combined. But.
Yeah. So yeah, but they're talking about a lot of planar stuff is what I'm reading a lot in the product description. So that'll be neat.
Planar stuff is supposedly the bread and butter of high level games, because by the time you get to 12th level or 13th level something, you can mow through most of an army without using up half your resources for the day. So
yeah.
It's kind of a problem, but you solve that by sending more and more dangerous monsters at them from more and more rarefied locations.
Yeah. But though, speaking about monsters, what are you hoping is going to be in the Tome of Foes?
Well,
some stuff that didn't quite make it into the Monster Manual. I was actually really happy with the 5th edition Monster Manual because they got like a lot of stuff like aboleths and other things that were like more obscure and hidden in other books before. Like they got a lot of really good stuff in the original Monster Manual.
Well, personally, I'm hoping for a couple, I always talk down about 3rd edition, and it had its problems, but there are some really cool monsters in the Monster Manual 3, 4, and 5. Probably my personal favorites are, for Monster Manual 3, will be the Corpse Collector, which is a golem that collects corpses for necromancers by sticking them on spikes in its giant iron body, which is hardcore. There's the Battle Walker, I believe, which is an angry fae that thrives on battlegrounds, which is a very different change from the usual fae archetypes we see.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, there's the Living Spell, which is an ooze that has the effects of one spell sort of embedded into it, and it roams around magical places and eats magic.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward. I really want, because I've already adapted one for my own use, because it was one of my favorite monsters. It was in the 3.5 Monster Manual 2 book, and that is the Runic Guardian.
Yes.
It's something I want to see a official 5e template for, because it's really cool. It's just a shield guardian, but it's got a bunch of spells written into it.
Yeah.
And it's, spellcast and golem. It's sweet. Pretty intelligent.
What's more to like? Or what's not to like? There you go.
Also, I'm trying to remember what they're called. They're like ocean giants, but they're not like they're giants, but they're like walking orcas.
Oh, geez. I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name of it. If somebody knows what we're talking about in the comment section, please hit us up.
Yeah.
Unlikely to happen, but
no, it's
pretty obscure.
No, it's an ocean strider. That's what it is.
Well, there you go. Never mind, guys. Sorry.
Yep, figured it out. Just took a second.
Beat to the punch.
Yep. No, those were ridiculous and cool, and also you could apparently, like, they had an adjusted character level if you were to play them as a class of plus 17.
Yeah, well.
Hey guys, I'm a level 1 ranger. I'm also able to fight a dragon.
Supposedly. 3rd edition.
Yeah, but there are a couple of the previews I saw, like they're going to be adding more devils, more angels, some more celestial stuff, more demonic stuff. Looking forward to it. I mean, it's going to be nice to get more monsters. I mean, between that and the the Creature Codex that Kobold Press is making.
Yeah.
Between that and then the Tome of Beasts and then Volos, we're officially about to be up to our knickers in monsters to use. So, as a DM, makes me pretty happy. Moving on. But
there's not much to say at the moment. Nothing's been revealed. So.
Yeah, nothing's been revealed. All the reveals are being done tomorrow, Monday, February. What day is it?
It's the 5th, I believe, right now.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
It is the 4th, so tomorrow's the 5th. Oh,
yeah,
I'm smart.
So, so Monday the 5th, all the details are going to be revealed, specifically on what's happening with that book. If you guys have anything you're looking forward to making a dramatic return to 5e, let us know in the comments or shoot us a message or whatever. So,
but besides all that, let's talk about why they're important.
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks.
Let's not waste any more time here is what you're saying.
Yeah, the big topic of the day, villains.
An essential part of pretty much any Dungeons & Dragons campaign that's more than just running around smashing doors and then killing anything that's in the room in a sort of glorified home invasion style.
Yeah. So before we really launch super into villains, this is going to be a 2-part thing. We're going to talk about this next week.
Or hopefully other people will be able to show up that time.
Yeah, when the rest of our motley crew is going to be here. But today we are going to talk about just the basics of building villains, how we like to do it, and
the story aspect of things rather than the mechanical aspect of things.
Yeah.
We'll get to the mechanical things next week. So,
villains. An essential part of every D&D game, and usually what every single
plot thread revolves around.
I was going to say what every single DM spends like just a little bit too much time on.
Well, yeah. It's a delicate art to say it. To put it lightly. There's a lot that needs to get done for villains, and it's very easy to do it wrong. And the problem is you won't know until your players encounter them.
Right.
Because what you might think is super cool, your players would think is overplayed and lame.
Very true. So let's start out at the beginning. You finished your world map. You got your players. They've fought and killed some goblins in a cave. Woohoo! They've done a couple of small quests. It's now that they've got
it's time to get a sort of plot thread going.
Yeah, and it's now that they've gotten a little adjusted, it's time for you to put a plot thread in and start running the game. And this is where you have to start introducing consistent villains.
Yes, and hopefully more than one. One villain's fine, but it just doesn't have the same gravitas if they just keep appearing everywhere. Like, do they not have a day job?
So, first things first. Let's discuss, so you're sitting there, you're sitting in your room, you're doing your plotting or wherever you do your plotting. I do a lot of my plotting on the toilet. You're sitting there, you're trying to figure out what do I want to make? Who's this bad guy going to be?
Who, what, when, where, why?
Yeah. So let's start out with building block one. Is your setting more of a black and white setting, or is it shades of gray?
It's an interesting conceit, and neither of them is particularly wrong, but we should probably clarify. As I'm sure people in this comment section already know, black and white morality assumes that the people are always good or always bad, and there's no middle ground, whereas shades of gray is people are bad in varying degrees and almost nobody's perfectly good, but there's also nobody who's absolute evil either. So the problem with the first scenario is it feels unrealistic because people are either squeaky clean and bright and happy and shiny, or they're wicked and evil, and there's not really much middle ground in that because most people aren't, one of these two ideals. But on the other hand, in a more idealistic work, having a character who's driven solely by their lust for gold seems a bit out of place.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes they don't pay their taxes and they kick puppies, but they're also fighting evil. Just looks ridiculous in, say, Star Wars.
Yeah. So with, ultimately this stuff usually depends on personal preference and who you're playing for, because there are some people who don't like playing in shades of gray, like this. For some people, this is D&D, this is fantasy, this is escapism.
It's supposed to be high fantasy, not dealing with politics and taxes.
Dealing with politics and taxes and God, if I wanted to do that, I'd just get involved with city council.
But you have more power here.
Yeah, no, you have more power here. Yeah, you can bring a sword to the city council meeting. I'm pretty sure if I were to do that to my local city council meeting, the cops would be called immediately.
Oh yeah.
So
besides that
though, so black and white, shades of gray, however you want to do it. But
depending on how you're doing, it's going to affect how your villains work.
Yes. So let's just name drop a couple of very black and white villains as compared to like shades of gray villains. So if we actually look at the holy trinity of gateway nerd culture, as we were discussing in the car, which is Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Thank you.
There you go. That's the word you're looking for.
Yep. If we look at that holy trinity, all of those are definitely set in a world of good, bad. There is occasional, like,
questionable but not evil characters.
Yes. There's a couple of people who work on a shades of gray scale. But when you look at all the major characters in those stories, they're either very, very good or they're very, very bad.
Yeah, I mean, Lord Voldemort is about as deep onto the far end of the black morality as you get.
Yeah.
Where I'm evil because I'm evil.
Yeah, if it's Fallout 3, he's got negative 1,000 karma. But when it comes to black and white villains, and you look at all three of those, every single big bad guy in each of those stories is basically just a
jerk,
a monolith of evil.
They might have motivations, but those motivations don't necessarily condone the level of enormous jackassery that's involved.
Yeah, the Emperor from Star Wars is just a monolith of evil.
He's just a jerk.
Yeah, he just wants power to destroy. Voldemort is a monolith of evil. He just wants to take power and destroy. Sauron is a monolith of evil.
Yeah.
He just wants to take power and destroy. They all do
let's be fair. Those last two just want to take power and rule.
But also destroy. Voldemort wants to get rid of all the half-blood, he wants to get rid of all Muggles and half-blood wizards. He wants
and the least subtle comparison to the Nazis of all time.
Yeah. Sauron also has somewhat similar ideals and is also a pretty...
Sauron's motivations are complex, and this is unfortunately because Tolkien did not actually decide to tell you anything about Sauron in the books. He's just kind of there.
He's just kind of there, and he's just kind of big and ominous, but at the same time, some of the little stuff he does do is still very indicative of the Hitler influence, which I guess is something we should talk a little bit about, because, I mean...
It's a pretty big... It's used quite frequently.
Well, it is used quite frequently because, I mean, for the last 70 years or so, I mean... Hitler and or Nazis, like that parable is the easiest way to,
This is a bad guy.
yeah, this is a bad guy. And they usually have very charismatic, swarms and legions of people who follow them blindly and will do whatever they say.
Fanatic mooks, if you will.
Yep. And then usually when the big bad guy is taken out of power, they all go, well, I didn't mean to.
See you later.
Yeah, no, I didn't do anything wrong the entire time.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, no, if I didn't follow him, he said he was going to kill me. I'm actually not a jerk.
Well,
But in a black and white setting,
that kind of makes sense.
it makes sense, though. There are just going to be those beings of pure evil, and
Most people are not viscous fonts of evil.
Yeah.
So
the party is obviously there to be the counter.
and to smack them. until
Shades
they
of
stop being
Grey
evil.
is where we get into Game of Thrones territory, where it's like you like every character, but you also kind of hate every character a little bit. Like
I mean,
everybody's
there's good people in those worlds.
There
but
is good people, but then there's, a lot of them are a little rough around the edges. A great Shades of Grey villain from Game of Thrones, using Game of Thrones as an example, is Tywin Lannister.
The more you play Crusader Kings, the more you sympathize with him.
I know. Well, what makes Tywin so great as a villain is the fact that he was driven since he was a little kid to make House Lannister great again. Make House Lannister great again. Successfully did that, was basically ruled the country as Hand of the King, because
The regent, if you will.
well, he was the Hand of the King because the Mad King was, shall we say, bad at his job, just a
Little mentally
just a little
unstable.
bad at his job.
Surprisingly, a guy called the Mad King
Yeah.
is pretty crazy. Shock.
And then after that, he, now all the stuff boils over and everything happens. His whole goal is still just to keep his family on top, and he does very vicious, very ruthless things. But at the same time,
It's necessary, or at least he thinks it's necessary.
he thinks it's necessary, and you see him show compassion and kindness, and he's a very stern father figure, and he has he's very certain aspects that he wants, but there's parts of him that are likable. He's not just a monster who's, kill everybody, burn the babies, salt the earth, all that. He just wants to win a war and make sure that his family comes out on top.
Yeah.
Solid Shades of Grey villain. But if you don't want to run a political game, that is fine.
That said, politics are not, generally speaking, Dungeons & Dragons' forte, because most of your tools, so to speak, are a hammer.
Yeah.
I can hit things really hard, and you want me to solve this long-standing racial feud between two neighboring countries? Probably not going to go well. There's probably going to be some stabbing involved.
All right. So let's get some definitions out here on the table. Let's try to define really quick, too, the difference between a villain and an antagonist.
Yes, because every single monster your players are going to run across isn't necessarily a villain, because most of them have no names, they don't really need much of a personality, and they're there pretty much solely to be fought.
Owl bears.
A wizard did it.
Yeah. There's other things too that can be considered an antagonist, if you're writing a traditional story. For example,
A difficult scenario that needs to be overcome, basically.
yeah, a massive storm, and there's, say you're in the lowlands and there's flooding. That's an antagonist situation. Another good antagonist situation is the Tarrasque, if we're going to the very extreme spectrum, because a Tarrasque, unless you've made an intelligent Tarrasque, why would you do that? Good God, why? Have you no compassion, man?
Some people just like
Some
watching
people
suffer.
Some people like playing SimCity and then
Hitting the meteor button.
and then hitting the meteor button. Yeah, but a Tarrasque is a very good example of an
antagonistic force that cannot really be a villain.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's something that needs to be resolved, but
It's not like you're going to debate about why it's doing this.
Yeah.
You know why it's doing this.
yeah, you can't talk the Tarrasque down unless you're a bard,
Even then, it's going to be
and even
rough
then it's
go.
going to be impossible. The bard thing was a joke. But villains are plotters, schemers.
A villain needs to have a few things to be not acceptable necessarily, but to be, geez, what's the word? Like passable, quality. Enough that you won't feel ashamed to use it. They need to have a few things. They need to have a motivation that makes sense, or if it doesn't make sense, make it consistently not make sense.
Yeah.
They need to have a way to do things, what they're doing, and an origin for the villain.
Yeah. Now, it all comes down to style, and it all comes down to what your players catch on to. But I usually find that, when you're thinking about what kind of villain you want to do, you obviously really have to take into account what your players are like.
Oh, yeah. Right to your audience.
Yeah, I've had villains who, like, very narcissistic, I'm pretty good at talking smack as a DM to my players. I'm pretty good at getting into character and, saying some mean things to my players.
The verbal beat
Yeah.
down.
And I've had some parties that just don't care. They're just like, oh, yeah, he's talking. Yeah, I bet he'll keep talking after I hit him with a sword. Yeah, I don't care. There have been other parties, though, that when I start talking all that hot shit, they get real upset. They're just like, I want to kill him, I want to kill him, I want to kill him, I want to kill him. But then I've had the opposite effect happen. I've had beast monster type characters, and we'll get into archetypes in a second. But I've had these monster, just like these, their whole job is like they talk a little bit
And then they attack you.
and then they're just monsters of combat. And I've had parties run into those and like deal with them and survive and be like, well, that was stupid. And then I've had other parties like so galvanized, and they're just like, we got to find him, we got to track him down, we got to murder him. So understanding your audience is going to be core to designing your villain. Let's look at raw archetypes really quick.
Very briefly. Or not very briefly, but briefly.
I do believe we shared a link to a asset we used earlier. It's an article about basically 28 different types of villains, archetypes for writing. A lot of these are applicable to D&D. Some of them are a little
Less so.
less so, but for the most part, it actually makes really good reading, and it's a decent resource to have when you're planning a villain. We'll be sure to put it up on our website. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that we have a website now.
Imagine that.
Yeah. So we'll be sure to put it on the website. You can find the website on the Facebook. But let's go over some of these, because a lot of these frame very well for big, bad, evil guy writing.
Yeah. Big Bad Evil Guy is the main villain that currently exists in your campaign.
Yes, the mover and shaker of all things dickish, so to speak, at this period in time.
What a jerk.
So let's just go over some of these various archetypes. The first one is obviously the mastermind,
Which is the big one for Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah,
This is
big
the
bad-
character that's planning things. They have a reason to do things. They know what they want to do, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to do it.
Yeah, at its best, this is Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes is a great example of a mastermind, big bad evil guy. He, comes out of the darkness, and he's the antithesis of our hero, and he is able to cause problems, and by the time
needs the hero to solve them.
he needs the hero to solve them, and by the time the hero realizes who it is, it's already too late. His plan has succeeded. Now, on the opposite side of that, though, I think the Vince McMahon meme.
It's me, Austin.
Yeah, from the late '90s with the Undertaker. That bit, the opposite of effective. It gave us that great meme of "It was me, Austin. It was me all along." But other than that, that's bad mastermind writing.
Just what a twist. Secretly, they were behind this the entire time.
Yeah. So the idea with like a mastermind type character is that you usually have very little interaction with them.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to meet them face to face for a long time, but you'll start to see bits and pieces of their work and start recognizing like their signatures, so to speak. And you'll notice that things are kind of coming together over time. Basically, the best way to do this in a Dungeons & Dragons game is to sit down and lay out a plot of what they want and how are they going to do that. But you don't want to tell them, the PCs, out and out what's going on, but you want them to piece it together from the things they find the mastermind doing.
Right. So the mastermind is going to be a character that is almost always operating in the background. When we go back to that holy trinity that we referred to at the beginning, Sauron and the Emperor from Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, respectively, are pretty prime examples of mastermind type characters. You see the Emperor very little. You see Sauron, obviously, very little. He's just a great flaming eye, and the Emperor only sits there just to yell at Darth Vader a little bit, but even not that much. Obviously, Luke doesn't even meet the Emperor fully until the Return of the Jedi.
Like the very last scene.
Yeah, like the very last scene of the movie. Like that's kind of what this mastermind archetype is for.
A mastermind is also, like, they may be high level. They might pose a decent threat, but they're really not supposed to be fighting, and they should be worse at it than their henchmen.
Yes. And that actually brings us to our next example of an archetype. This one on the list, just to keep the resource that we used, just to keep it congruent with that, this one is called the dragon.
Yes, it's a traditional. Also, we should note, most dragons are not dragons.
Yeah. So
confusing, I know.
Yeah, most dragons are masterminds. We'll try to clarify that a little better, I suppose. But let's get on with the explanation of dragons. So the dragon archetype, so to speak, is the right-hand man of the mastermind. This is the mover and shaker. This is the person who's out in the field actually doing
does
everything.
what the mastermind is setting up.
And this is usually the guy that the party encounters.
Yes, this is usually the main threat that the party is going to encounter from the mastermind.
Obviously, the best example of the dragon as an archetype for a villain as it exists is Darth Vader.
Yeah, he pretty much is the main example on what everyone else apes. It's just Darth Vader he's intimidating, he's cool, he's much better than the heroes at their jobs.
Yep.
And he's mad, bad, and dangerous to know.
Exactly. And he commands a lot of respect. He cuts a very intimidating figure and is a constant
thorn in RPC's sides. Or rather, they're more of a thorn in his side, all told.
Yes, but he frequently tracks them down successfully. I mean, like the scene in Cloud City, where he's just sitting there in the dining room just like, hey, kids, didn't see me coming, did you?
What a twist.
Yeah. But what makes him so effective as a villain archetype is this is going to be the villain that is usually going to butt heads with your party.
Yes.
This is the villain type where they are going to very often, more often than most, attack your party or do things like with their unique stamp on it. They're going to be the ones, where the party is just like riding into a town or whatever. And then in the middle of the night, it's like, oh, Lord Dickish just showed up and, with his 20 men, and they've tracked us to a tavern, and he's just going to sit outside on a horse while the guards all charge into the tavern, and then
he's going to do this to you. He's going to point his fingers in his eyes and then at you, and then back to his eyes and then back to you as you butcher your way through his 20 guys, and he's going to ride off.
Yeah, and then either he's going to ride off or he's going to come in after you, at which point, it's usually, oh, no.
Yeah, it's time to flee.
Time to run away.
It's kind of difficult because Dungeons & Dragons doesn't necessarily lend itself very well to this, but ideally a dragon is not going to die the first time you see him. He needs an escape plan.
Which, just as an aside too, escape plans or built-in mechanisms for survival are always great when you want to try to keep a villain around. This actually
players will find their ways around them though, so just get ready for that.
Well, I am going to go off on a slight little tangential thing here in a minute that relates to this. This is something I had planned for a little bit later in the show, but villain behavior is something that's a weird skill to try to learn. Trying to get into that villain mindset.
Yeah.
But one way that's always been very effective for me, and this might not work for everybody else, I'm a huge professional wrestling nerd. Absolutely adore professional wrestling. If you like professional wrestling, sweet, we can be friends. If you don't like it, sweet, we can still be friends. Just don't make fun of professional wrestling because I will suplex you through a table. So, really quick, in pro wrestling, heels are the bad guys. And there is basically two ends of a spectrum for how to be a bad guy. There is what is known as a monster, and then there is what is known as a chicken shit on the opposite end of the spectrum.
One or two.
Yeah. So a monster is just one who goes in, kicks all the ass, destroys the good guys, and he just looks like an absolute beast the whole time he's doing it. Brock Lesnar is a great example of a monster heel. Braun Strowman, for anybody watching nowadays, is a great example of a monster heel. Back in the day, Andre the Giant, when he turned into a bad guy, was a monster heel. On the opposite end of that spectrum is the chicken shit, who only shows up when he has an advantage, usually has a bunch of henchmen, and then the minute things
start going bad for him.
Yeah, the minute things start going poorly for him, he runs.
Which is effective and realistic, don't get me wrong, but your players will hate that.
Oh, they will hate that, but if it's used effectively, it can
you can hopefully transfer the hate onto the villain rather than to you as the game master.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that would be bad.
But so when it relates though to using any archetype, that's something I always like to keep in mind is usually it's, because it's a spectrum, it's a fine line. And trying to find out if, okay, this person's like their personality is a dominant type, they're going to jump in and they're going to be aggressive. That's one thing. If they're just going to run away the second everything else turns bad, that's another thing. Trying to find that fine line is very helpful.
Yeah.
But finishing thoughts on the dragon archetype, as it's called.
This is probably the one that's going to see the most use out of any of these archetypes because this is a character who is a subordinate villain to your main villain. And chances are good, like, while they're important, if they're killed, they can be replaced by another dragon who's going to step up from the ranks. So you're going to see a lot of these compared to the other villains.
So moving on to, and there's 28 of these, by the way.
We're not going to go through all of them.
Yeah, we're not going to go through all of them, but we're just, we're going to kind of ship through a couple of the really good ones, the ones that are very commonly used as villains, because this is, I like to think of this as basic villain theory, so to, so on and so forth.
Villain theory with Professor Frankfurt.
Yeah. Oh God, I should not be allowed to teach people anything. Why am I doing this show? So, the Magnificent Bastard is an archetype which I am very fond of.
This is more of a counterpoint to the mastermind than it is to the dragon, for the record.
Yes. You could also call the Magnificent Bastard the narcissist. The showboater.
You wouldn't be wrong about that.
Is another way to put it. The idea of the Magnificent Bastard is that a great idea of a hilarious Magnificent Bastard from pop culture is Ben Stiller from Dodgeball. White Goodman, that's his name. Yeah, White Goodman is a excellent Magnificent Bastard because he's vain. He's an excellent talker. He's obnoxious, but he's still better than everybody else, and he even has that catchphrase, "We're better than you," and we know it.
Yeah, a Magnificent Bastard has to be better than the players or whatever. This is kind of hard to say because pretty much all villains have to be better than PCs unless you're running like a squad of 6 or 7 of them, because otherwise the PCs are just going to turn them into paste in a couple seconds.
Yeah.
That's still a problem also.
Yeah, but we'll address that in tactics, which I think we'll be discussing next week. But the Magnificent Bastard makes a great a great leader of men like the dragon. I think the Magnificent Bastard is a excellent example of it's similar to the dragon, but not as dangerous as the dragon.
They're also a lot more talkative than the dragon is usually.
Yes.
Because the dragon's going to show up sword swinging and point to you and make a throat-cutting gesture, and the Magnificent Bastard's going to burst into the scene, declare who they are, why they're here, and why you suck.
Yeah. And then they also tend to just bore you to death with their talk, which is a lot of fun. If you have a party that's into people, again, who talk a lot of smack, the Magnificent Bastard is a great archetype to work with. So the Devil Incarnate is another one.
Which is much easier to do in Dungeons & Dragons because we literally have access to devils.
Yes.
Now, I said before that a character should probably have some sort of motivation for why they're doing what they're doing. This is kind of the counterpoint to it is in Dungeons & Dragons, there are creatures that are literally made out of evil. So it's not unusual they're doing rude, stupid, evil things because they're evil, like with a capital E. If you really need a villain who is a jerk for no good reason, just pull a devil or a demon out of the bag. Boom, done. It's kind of lazy, but who cares?
Right.
Save yourself some time. And I mean, this gives you a perfect reason for where they came from and why they're doing this, because they're evil.
Yeah. But important things about the Devil Incarnate archetype. There's another type that is similar to this, but I can't remember what it's called. I think it's the Butcher. The Devil Incarnate, importantly, is like the important distinction about it is they try to make things happen through deals and social negotiation. They make promises, of power, and they manipulate people in positions.
A deal at the crossroads, if you will.
Yeah. Just because they're actually martially very powerful themselves does not mean that that's the route they take.
Yeah, they're not going to show up and start kicking your head in. They're going to, be a starting force for the other villains to come after you.
Another good
It's
example.
just villains all the way down.
Yeah, another good example too of the devil incarnate is actually a red dragon.
Yes.
Or any evil alignment dragon, but when I think devil incarnate, I think red dragon, because red dragons are usually the ones who make
Pacts.
pacts and deals. Although blue dragons are also very proficient in legalese, but that's enough like dragon specific stuff.
Just don't use white dragons for it. That doesn't make much sense.
No, it doesn't. But blue and red dragons are both very proficient at being this kind of character because they don't necessarily need to blow everything up all the time. You know, they're dragons. They take their sweet time in plotting. But as the old Shadowrun adage goes, never make a deal with a dragon.
Because they're always going to get the high end of it.
Yeah, because it's always planned out in their favor. And
they're older than you. They've been doing this for longer than you, and they're much better than you at it.
Yeah, and that's what makes them excellent villains, though, still, is a conveniently placed snake oil salesman in the term of deals with the devil.
Yeah. One thing you should also note, and not to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
For this kind of villain, for the dragon, you personally, as the game master, are not nearly as clever as they are because they're superhumanly clever. So there's a kind of trick you have to do when they come to this incredible plotting with their intelligence 30 or whatever. Cheat. Just they know what's happening because they predicted it long in advance. How could they have predicted it? They predicted it. They're smarter than you.
Yeah.
Just do it. It's not hard.
Okay.
There you go. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. So devil incarnate, deal maker, and then we move on to the next one, which is the beast.
This is the simple one.
This is a very simple, straightforward villain, but can be remarkably effective if done right. This is basically just the living hurricane. This is something that just shows up, whoops everybody's ass into the dirt, and leaves.
Or it chases off the players, which is difficult because most people are suicidally overconfident.
Yeah, most people think that. Yeah, that's that's another table to table thing though. It depends because I know I've played in some groups where they're just like, well, if the DM put it here, it means we can kill it, right?
Yeah. Which is metagaming, which is a topic for another show.
Yeah. And then there's people on the other side because I've been on both sides. There have been times where I've charged into a situation and I'm just like, we're not gonna die to this. And then there's been other times where I've seen like something sneezed really loudly and I'm just like, I don't like this. We're done.
Go.
We're going. We're leaving.
A more realistic approach for your character, perhaps.
Yeah. So moving forward though,
this character comes out of nowhere, it beats you up, and either it leaves or you get away.
Yeah, the Juggernaut from Marvel Comics is a excellent example of the Beast, because the Beast is still intelligent. Like, it has motivations, it has thoughts, it has feelings, but
it's not a wild animal.
It's not a wild animal.
It doesn't care much about thinking.
Yeah, its best abilities is its ability to hit stuff, and the Juggernaut from the X-Men is a great example of a Beast villain.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the last major archetype we got listed down, unless there's a couple you can think of as well, Paul. But the career criminal.
Yes, this is one that your players may even be, honestly.
Yeah. No, this is typically what a lot of rogues end up being in their backstories.
This is somebody who isn't evil because they have a particular reason to be evil. This is somebody who commits things because there's money involved. They commit crimes because they're paid to do so. This is obviously not a very heroic feature, but it also makes them the least likely to be a font of evil because they're doing this they punch in, they do their evil deeds, they punch out, and they go home. So ultimately, these are the kind of characters who will, in tough situations, say, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm not getting killed for this. So these are the ones who don't have the devotion that other ones do.
Devotion.
That kind of makes them interesting in a way because they're much more realistic in their motivations and they decide to leg it if things are going poorly.
Yeah. They're, it's usually those mafioso types or people hitmen or people who control aspects of the underground if we're going from a big, bad, evil guy perspective. But the career criminal arc is just The nice thing about the career criminal, and this is something else we didn't get into, but the career criminal is one of the few archetypes that actually can show a lot of redeemable traits.
Yeah, they could become a good guy, assuming that things change.
Yeah, if their environment changes, or if
it's not even a very big change necessarily.
Yeah, if things are done to facilitate a change in character and in heart, then they are they can become a positive NPC.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for your paladins, by the way.
Yeah, and even then, if things like that are not done, the career criminal is one of the few big bad evil guys.
It's like, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah, well, not even that. It's you can befriend them. They're not opposed to having allies. They work definitely a lot more in that shades of gray kind of mindset. Trying to think, a good example would be basically everybody in The Godfather.
Yeah.
Is a great example of career criminal. A lot of times they show redemptive traits and they show the ability to perhaps turn it around, but at the same time there's, executions and cutting off horses' heads and, a whole lot of nasty business.
Well, they're going to do evil things, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it because they're evil.
Right. So last one we're going to talk about just of these archetypes. And again, we highly recommend you go check out that the article we linked. We're also going to put it on our website, but it's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great archetype reading, and it can definitely inspire a lot of things. Is going to be the Dark Knight.
Yes.
Basically has their own code of ethics, is still,
might seem strange to you, but it makes sense from their perspective.
Yeah. A lot like common ones are no women, no children, things of that nature, only wandering around looking for people who...
For more fights, more dangerous fights. The wandering martial arts master happens to be a jerk.
Yeah, the villain who is looking for a worthy fight, and only takes jobs based on a worthy fight. That's actually a really good example of a Dark Knight character. There's an anime called The Get Backers, and there is a character on the show named Dr. Jackal, who
I'm interested.
He only takes jobs based on the ability to, based on if he thinks it's going to be a fun job. He doesn't care about money. He if it's going to be a challenge for his skills, and he doesn't always go around murdering people, but
if it's a challenge, he will.
If it's a challenge, he will.
It's not like he's going to drop by and kick some old lady off the side of a road and beat her to death. And that's just not cool.
Yeah, but whenever
challenge.
Yeah, but whenever he is getting paid for it, or whenever he just finds it a challenge, he turns on the sadistic, and is just a real piece of work. He is easily the best character on the show. Another good example of the Dark Knight is Arthas.
Yes. Well, Arthas is a lot of things, depending on
Arthas. Yeah, Arthas is a lot of things, but Dark Knight. I guess a better way to phrase it: Arthas, after getting Frostborn,
but before becoming
the Lich King from World of Warcraft,
and from Warcraft specifically.
Yeah, is a great example of the Dark Knight character. It's pretty straightforward, though. They have a code of ethics. They
follow this. They're not. From their perspective, their code of ethics makes sense, and they probably don't think of themselves as wicked, or if they do, they wholeheartedly embrace it.
Yeah.
In a way, they're sort of a foil to the beast because they think through what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they only act according to what they think their code is going to have them do.
Exactly.
I mean, heck, even anti-paladins in Dungeons & Dragons are excellent Dark Knight choices.
Yeah. Okay, so really quick, guys, we're going to go take a 5-minute break. When we get back, we're going to discuss our successes and failures with our own personal villains. And we're going to talk about the giveaway a little bit more, and we're going to try to set the table for next week's show, which is going to be a lot more this is more theory kind of stuff.
We're going to talk about the details,
the actual practice of effective villain making. And I think for fun, we're going to make a villain on the show next week.
Sure, why not? We can do it.
All right, but we're going to take a $5. We'll be back.
Stay with us,
please. Okay, and we are back.
Hey,
Like the Fonzie. Hey.
sorry about the delay, guys. We are back. So, where were we?
All right, so coming back now, we are going to be talking about, I guess, successes and failures that we've personally had and or witnessed, but we're going to try pretty hard not to completely chuck somebody under the bus.
Oh, yeah.
So
Clint's not here. We can throw him under the bus.
no, I don't want to throw that poor boy under the bus. So, and we'd also love to hear from you guys too on any like memorable villains that either you as a DM came up with or something you as a player went against. Like any stories of that. If you have any stories like that, send them as a message to us. We'd love to hear them. Might even share them.
Might. Probably will. We love our audience participation.
Yeah, we do. So,
Let's get
Paul,
started.
what is your favorite villain that you've ever made?
Oh,
One that
geez.
worked with the one that worked well against the party, that the party legitimately loved fighting. Like and you know, kind of sad to see him go a little bit.
Geez, this is a really tough question for me because I've got a whole bunch of these people. I guess probably my personal favorite villain would have to be Alucon in my Dungeons & Dragons game.
Okay.
He had a clear origin, had a clear motivation. He's dead at the moment.
Yep.
For now. But everything he did had a sort of clear path A to path B. And while he was evil to the party, he made complete sense about why he was doing what he did because he wanted to bring back his masters from the grave.
Okay.
From the beyond, if you will.
And the party was enthralled enough to try to stop him.
Yes, well, that and they felt that they personally didn't like him. So,
which is good. Yeah, that is definitely probably the trickiest bit of doing villain design.
and of course, the best part is they eventually became their own villain at the end. But
Well, yeah.
make your own villain. It's the PCs.
So actually, hang on. I got a few questions about your guy.
Shoot.
So what exactly was he? Like class?
This is a very different system than Dungeons
yeah.
and Dragons.
So, well, if you could try to put it into D&D 5e terms.
He would have been a mystic / paladin, focusing on unarmed combat and the ability to keep people away from him except when he wanted to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
He could physically force people to move away from him whenever he wanted, and he could make it very difficult or impossible for you to move towards him.
Okay.
But specifically on top of that, he was absolutely terrifying in hand-to-hand combat. But that was pretty much it. And in a game with guns, that was a very large disadvantage.
Okay.
There's some problems involved in that, obviously. So,
Yeah, no, fair enough. All right, how about your least favorite, like the villain that you put out there and you thought everything was going to go great and then just it fell flat.
Well,
Didn't really hit the mark.
this is going to be a contentious topic with my players, including you, but I think probably my least favorite villain I've run is the Bright Queen, because her motivations came off as schizophrenic and
Yep.
didn't make much sense. And while she was aptly mysterious until the very end, when the pieces were revealed, it didn't sort of click into place. It just kind of felt like, okay.
Right.
And?
Well, we had I would say that we had it was a successful ending to the campaign.
Yes.
I can see, looking back on that game, what you mean by that. We had a lot of like prep and setup, and it was all led into this glorious large final battle against this thing that we didn't quite understand, but we just knew it was bad and we were fighting it.
But there are too many questions that weren't resolved, and when they were resolved, they were unsatisfying.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, from that game, I'm gonna have to say that, like, to answer one of the questions that we do have, like one of the favorite enemies you've ever ran into as a player, one of my favorites was that damn vampire you had. The vampire that got no name, but it had a great spooky introduction. We were down in a dungeon that led to the Underdark because
A buried city.
because our wizard, Mike, you dick, was the only person who could read the ruins on the door. He said, and it was like a do not enter, dangerous, danger, but, please don't go in this room, abandon all hope, ye who enter.
This door is sealed for a reason.
This door is sealed for a reason, work will set you free. Basically every ominous thing, that you've ever seen on a gate.
All plastered across all of it, crisscrossed.
Yeah, all across the door, and he just said, oh, no, guys, there's popcorn in here or something. He said something stupid, and even though we knew what it said, we're all just like,
time to put on our stupid hats.
We have to play stupid because he's the only one who can read. And we go inside, and inside this room, it's covered in glowing arcanic runes, and there's a great vibe. And then there's just a creepy, like 5 foot tall, white haired vampire girl that took our entire party of bad men in terms of our ass kicking ability and just
demolished you.
We got taken to church.
Yeah,
I spent half the fight bleeding with her on top of me, trying to eat me.
An unsuccessful first date, if you will.
Yeah, no, pretty much. It took people turning into crocodiles. We had a new fighter who was in the party who immediately got mind controlled and was just chasing everybody around the room. And it's like, look at how good my fighter build is, guys.
Oh, God, dominate person.
Yeah, no.
So useful. We'll talk about all the uses for dominate person another day.
Yeah, but then it was satisfying because, finally once we started making some ground and then we won, she turned into mist. We tracked her down to where her coffin was, and it turns out there was 10,000 coffins in there. And we're just like,
maybe I should go.
And we didn't have time to find her. And then we left the dungeon and we just started tracking her. And I remember those like 4 sessions we did where the vampire was like the big problem.
Just sort of going through your town like a very quiet chainsaw. So
yeah, no, and it was a great villain, and like everybody in the party was like super on the same page. Like, we were really mad at Mike,
as you probably should be. Mike,
because he let it out, and then second of all, we were all like, it's our responsibility. We gotta kill it. And it never had a name. We didn't know what it did. Like, there's still a whole lot of.
It wasn't telling anyone anything.
Yeah, so. It wasn't telling anybody anything, but it was just like super memorable because we had this sense of urgency that we had to fix our own mistake.
And of course, it ended with a great battle in a creepy mansion, which is always fun.
Great fight, creepy mansion, and I made its heart explode because I charged a smite into a stake. Because
why not, right?
Homie, don't play that. Homie, don't play that game.
No sense messing around when it comes to vampires.
What's your favorite thing that you've ran into as a player?
Geez, this is a tough choice. Probably Lazarus Finnegan, the undead ghost pirate.
Yeah.
Great time.
Yeah.
The fight itself was 4th edition D&D had a problem where the higher level monsters got, the more ridiculous their hit point pools got.
Yeah.
So we dealt about 20 damage an attack, and it had Lazarus Finnegan had 1,700 hit points.
Yep.
So it took a while.
No, yeah. Running that fight was that was about a 4-hour fight.
Yes. Oh my God! Don't remind me.
And just ghost pirates shooting cannons.
Also, it was like the final major fight in that campaign. So
yeah, because that campaign did fall apart
right at the very end too.
Yeah, just so close to the finish, but so far away.
But I mean, he had a lot of character. He kind of showed up, but we knew he was coming because there was some lead up to that in the background. And more importantly than that, he sort of just kind of talked at us for the entire time of the fight, and he built up his character a lot faster than most players in the party had their character built up. So
yeah. No, I really enjoyed that fight. I wouldn't mind doing it again in the future, but in 5, like adjusting it for 5e and also finding a way just to make it go by a little faster because there was a lot of moving machinations. Basically, to sum up the fight with Lazarus Finnegan, it was a fight on the equivalent of the Flying Dutchman, and there were ghost pirate crew running around with ghost pirate cannons, basically chasing the party around with ghost cannons on the deck of the ship, shooting at them while this giant pirate ghost is just trying to cut them down with a saber. He was a lot of fun to run. He was your creation, but I did take creative control once he
died.
Once he belonged to me, and after I'd killed the character. All right, let's see. Least favorite boss that you've ever played against?
Again, this is going to be
Or
quoting a game that you haven't played, but the battle with a mob leader in Mike's game just was supposed to be this big dramatic moment.
Was it Shadowrun?
Yes.
Okay.
Shadowrun. This person had led to my character's father's death because he felt that he was a liability to the local mafia. But he just kind of went down instantaneously. I mean, Shadowrun has a tendency to do that, but you'd feel there'd be some sort of like contractual boss immunity to that. So you're just getting shot in the face and dying.
Right.
It's realistic.
Yeah,
but
the anticlimactic.
it's like, oh, it's over.
All of that for nothing.
Well, so it goes.
Yep. All right, let's see.
What's the least favorite one you've ever played against?
The least favorite one I've ever played against.
Come on, throw me into the bus here.
I'm not going to throw you under the bus, actually. It's actually going to be Clint, which is going to make
Clint.
Fado really happy. But I will be very fair to Clint, though. This was his first villain, and he just overdid it. Like, he went way over the top to try to put us back in line because he, very new DM dealing with two very experienced players, and I'm not going to lie, we did put the screws to him a little bit. We,
As you gotta.
Mary made some very aggressive decisions, things that he was not expecting. And his response was basically a lich-type villain, and we're only like level 4, level 5. And so we had just declared ourselves the new rulers of this island because of good planning and dramatic choices. Yeah, shenanigans, political shenanigans. We wound up taking over the island. And so while we're sitting there going, yeah, look at us, we've taken over the island, it literally shows up with about 20 wizards, and they all cast Fireball at the same time while we have a rally going. At which point, all of us took all of the money out of the bank that belonged to the island, and we just ran away.
As you probably
sailed
should.
off the island because, when homies got 25th level wizards,
that's bad news.
I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, bad news.
We talked him through it though because all of us wanted to fight the thing, but legitimately, it's like this is a little you made it too strong.
Yeah, you came off a bit strong there.
Yeah, and just came off really strong, and so it was pretty intimidating. As a player, I immediately went from, okay, how can we possibly try to fight this thing to nope.
How far can we leg it without getting in trouble from the game master?
Exactly. How far are we allowed to travel, and how many carpets from the nice house we had can we take? That was my least favorite. Let's see. Probably the worst enemy, the worst villain I've ever put out there was.
It's always a tough choice throwing yourself under the bus.
No,
huh?
I know. There's a couple of them who just it didn't work. And it was and it's became very apparent pretty quickly that no one cared about the villain so much. He was just more of an annoyance. But if I'm gonna narrow that down, probably gonna have to say Arkenfell, my very first villain.
Yes.
Just had a lot of surprise factor. And even though I knew all the lore and everything that was behind it, and granted, you guys never got to the end of the campaign and you never got to know exactly what was up with him.
But we just weren't that intimidated by him.
No, he was more annoying, and he just showed up every now and again and just like, hi, I'm pain in the ass. Okay, bye. Now that being said though, he once I got better at DMing, probably the best villain I've ever done is the most recent major arc that I did. And that was with a character that I literally had to come up with when I was half drunk. So it goes. But that's Olimer Ryzen, who wound up becoming a vampire, who was very good at putting the screws to the party.
Yeah. Always a good trait in a villain.
Oh, and he successfully killed a member of the party, very sadistically in front of everybody else, and just inspired the utmost hatred. They already hated him before, and my players told me how they just could not stand him. But then after the murder happened, they all were actually mad at me for a little bit. Like after the session, they were just like, "How could you?"
Afraid you're going to get beaten up in the parking lot once you finish
Oh no, I'd
telling them?
I'd win that fight, but still. Yeah, and they are all thoroughly convinced, even though he's dead. They are all thoroughly convinced that he is not dead, and that I am just waiting for the day.
He's hiding.
Yeah, that he is going to come back, even though he's dead. So with that, I think that's all of our time this week.
I think we've run over a bit, but so it goes.
We're over by about a minute right now, so we're just going to do the quick wrap up, thangy poo, really quick. So we're going to talk. So this week was just kind of light villain theory kind of stuff.
We'll talk more about the intricate details next week.
Yeah, the actual making a villain and how to frame him against your players. So one more time, we are the 3DMs podcast. We record out of Podcast Detroit in Royal Oak, Michigan. If you're in the southeastern Michigan area and you want to start your own podcast, check out Podcast Detroit. Reasonable rates, great people to work with, great equipment, very comfortable. Excuse me.
We're doing a giveaway. I should remind you, when we reach 500 likes, we're going to give out 2 books to 2 lucky people. That is to say, 1 book to each person, not 2 books to 2 people. That'd be a bit pricey. No special editions, but once we reach 500 likes, we're going to do a drawing, and whoever wins is going to get a book shipped to them. We can even sign it if you want. I think that about covers it, though.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. So it's just us 2 this week. More villains talk next week, and
hopefully there'll be people here for that.
Yeah, hopefully. And if anybody else has any ideas for any shows or anything you want to hear us talk about on the show, please get a hold of us. We love talking to you guys.
Oh, yeah.
With that, though, and last but not least, you can find our podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud now. Just go look for 3DMs, and it should be available on a couple other things. The only thing I know we're definitely not on is Spotify. It's still, we're in a weird area where things are getting uploaded to different places. Check out our Facebook for our official website, which we're adding more and more stuff to.
Every day.
And I think that's about it.
I think that's it.
All right, I'm Jake.
I'm Paul.
And we're done.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy the superb owl.
Have a good week.
And wait for it. Hold.
Fear not, ranger, barbarian, magician, thief, cavalier, and acrobat.
Who was that?
That was Venger, the force of evil. I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
And wait for it. Stop streaming. Stop.